Hi and welcome to another review. My name's Michael and today we're looking at a couple of products from the UK company Darkstar collection. It is their Traveller's Notebook and the Robert Oster signature ink Darkstar Blue that was created especially for this product line. We'll go into more detail about the range shortly, just a couple of brief specs about what you get. Now, you get a pack of 3 of these Traveller's Notebooks and the bottle of ink, and it's £19 or £20, $19.99. So pretty decent sort of value for a handcrafted notebook and sort of a exclusive boutique ink. The ink comes in the usual 50ml Robert Oster bottle, which is environmentally friendly and a good size and shape for filling up your pens. The notebook is 100 GSM paper. I got it in the dot grid, and it has 56 pages and is 10 centimeters by 14 centimeters, so the typical traveller's notebook size. The ink is this really lovely dark blue, which was designed by Robert Oster to emulate the name Darkstar, giving a sense of sort of the evening sky. Sort of a dusty dark blue, but it does have a slight sort of bit of shine to it if you catch it on in the right light on the right paper. We'll start with the notebook and we'll just do a very brief little explanation of the book. Just to sort of compare, here it is alongside a Field Notes notebook. As you can see, it's roughly the same height, but the Darkstar is wider than the sort of typical pocket notebook. But the paper in the Darkstar is a lot better than the paper in the Field Notes. Darkstar have suggested that this paper is fountain pen friendly. I'll go into that a little bit more detail shortly. And the Field Notes is really not fountain pen friendly. You can use some drier inks and some finer nibs, but really anything more than that does tend to bleed straight through. So here it is in comparison to a fountain pen friendly pocket notebook. This is the book produced by Goulet Pens, which uses Tomol River paper. Once again, I've got it here in the dot grid. This is the heavier weight Tomol River, not the 52 gram, although you can get it also in that. And this is really fountain pen friendly paper. The paper's treated so that very little actually will come through from one side, like with bleed or feathering or anything like that. So the Darkstar comes with this beautiful black, this particular version comes with the black cover, and it's handmade in the United Kingdom. As I said, 56 pages of 100 GSM paper, so it is quite thick, and it's a sturdy paper. It is smooth, but not super smooth, certainly smoother than some sort of cheaper brands, but it doesn't compare in terms of paper to say Rodeo or Clairefontaine, or of course the Tomol River. It has this really nice little embossed logo on the front and Darkstar collection embossed on the back. It's staple bound and fits in sort of those traveller's notebook covers that are widely available from a number of different manufacturers, and that sort of passport size. They did say this paper is fountain pen friendly, so I have put it through a couple of little tests. I tried it with a number of different pen options, inks and nibs, everything from 1.5 millimeter nibs to a flex, and then some inks that are really normally high sheening inks, such as Robert Oster Tranquility and of course Blackstone Barrier Reef Blue. And we virtually got no sheen on this paper. It seems to be quite absorbent. In sort of standard inks like Diamine Jet Black or Konpeki, you lose some of that shading that you tend to get with things like Konpeki. And as you can see on this side, things like the Flex Pen and the 1.5s did bleed through much more than I like. In fact, I did a Fender's list at the back. We got some bleed from Mont Blanc Oyster Grey, the Sailor Fude nib with the Sailor black ink came through, Diamine Sargasso C in the Flex, and Tyrian Purple in the 1.5. And as you can see, these were the ones that sort of all ate through the paper, bled through. There is a tiny bit of feathering with the flex nib, but they are a sort of a sharper nib, so that can be caused by sort of a bit of damage to the paper as you're writing, but really it's that bleed that I find concerning, seeing as though there's a couple of like standard nibs here as well that seem to eat through. It is, as I said, it's smooth but not super smooth. It has a bit of tooth to it, which I quite like, particularly when writing with, say, a pencil, and it's pleasant writing experience. My concerns about the notebook, or my what I think are the downsides, it's firstly its inability to stay sort of open and lie flat on its own. As they're handmade, I think there's probably something in the folding process that doesn't quite allow for that. There's also, with 56 pages, you've got quite this heavier paper. It's quite a wide notebook. Here it is in comparison to the say the 48-page field notes. So it is considerably thicker. And field notes does also have a bit of an issue. All these little staple bound books have a bit of an issue with staying completely open on their own. But this is quite a chunky book for its size. So let's have a quick look at the ink now. As I said, it's Robert Oster Darkstar Blue, and it's a really lovely shade of this sort of dark blue. You can't, trying to get some sheen on there, it really doesn't sheen much at all, and that's absolutely fine. It's the warmth of this colour is quite appealing, particularly in the darker sections of the ink. As I said, 50ml bottle. Robert Oster inks generally cost Australian about $17, so when you partner with the 3 notebooks for £20, it's actually a pretty good offer, and it's an ink that I've quite enjoyed using. So here's the quick look at the chromatography. Not a lot going on. It's really this dusky blue and a little bit of lighter blue at the top. It's a nice sort of shade, and as you can see from the chromatography, it hangs around quite nicely sort of at the bottom, as you'll see with the slightly surprising water resistance that you'll see in just a second. Now here is the written test on the 80 GSM Rhodia paper. So just talk you through it all. This was done with a Lamy All-Star with a broad nib, which gives the ink a nice chance to shade and puts down enough ink for some decent saturation. I've also done a little writing sample with a 1.1 and a Lamy Extra Fine, and it actually looks really nice in the Extra Fine, where there is less shading. It still gives a nice sort of deep dark blue. It shades reasonably well from the 1 pass through to the 3 passes, and as you can see from the swab down the side, the dusty sort of blue in the middle is quite nice and very apparent in the shading of the ink. So in terms of the tests, we've got saturation. It's fair. It's better in wetter pens. You do get a bit more of that sort of darker blue, and as you can see from the 1.1, for instance, that's quite a nice sort of shade. Water resistance. Now, this surprised me a little bit, I've got to say. Robert Oster inks generally tend to be quite low on water resistance. This one behaved reasonably well. Yes, we did lose a lot of the detail in particularly the drop test, but where the numbers were, I gave that a real working over to try and get that to come off the paper, and I ended up taking the top coating of the paper off before we lost all the detail in the numbers, so that's not so bad. Cleaning is good. It's a little trickier than some of those sort of lighter Robert Oster inks, and certainly harder than some of the, say, the Pilot Iroshizuku inks, but in comparison to, say, Permanent Blues and Bay State Blue and things like that, it's a really easy cleaner. Shading is good. I particularly like the darker qualities within the shading. Sheen, low to none. Yeah, it's not that sort of ink. Colour, it's a nice sort of dark dusty blue, and the wetness is fair. It's not a highly lubricated ink, but the flow is surprisingly nice from the pen. Dry time on the Rhodia was fair at about 20 seconds, and as you'll see on some other paper, the dry time changed, well, was as you would sort of expect. We'll go into bleed and feathering in a second. X factor, Personally, I really like the dark dusty shade of this blue, particularly in the heavier sections, and I think that's the nicest feature of this ink, but there's no sort of standout X factor like a particularly vibrant, exciting colour or sheen or shading or particulates in the ink or whatever. It's just a really sort of nice darkish blue. I wouldn't go so far as to say blue-black, but in the darker shades it does tend to head towards that sort of colour range. So bleed and feather. Okay, nothing on this paper, which actually says a lot about the Darkstar notebook as well. There's really nothing that came through, only where we laid down a lot of ink for the swabs and a little bit from the flex. On Turmoil River 52 gram paper, if this ink was going to sheen, this is where it would sheen, and as you can see, there's just nothing there, but we do get some really lovely shading happening. Dry time is 35 to 40 seconds, so a little bit longer, of course, but really well behaved. Sort of nothing sort of coming through. Next we have the Reflex copy paper, and once again, really well behaved. Dry time 15 to 20 seconds, which was roughly the same as the Rhodia, and the only place we got bleed was where it put down a lot of ink. The lowest quality paper I tried it on was the Spirax notebook, and dry time of 10 to 15 was actually a little slow, I thought, for this paper. Normally things dry on this paper around the 5-second mark. This did go into over the 10 mark, and we do get a little bit of bleed here and there. So it's going to eat through cheaper paper, but that's not particularly surprising, seeing as though most inks will have an effect on this paper. So before we do the scoring and I talk through that, I have done a written sample in the Darkstar notebook, because I thought that would be sort of, as these were partnered together, I thought that would be a nice little thing to see. So here it is in the Darkstar, once again done with the broad. Dry time of 15 to 20 seconds, which shows that this paper is on the more sort of absorbent side, better than the Rhodia, and sort of closer to the Reflex copy paper. There's no sheen. Shading comes up quite nicely on this paper, but we do get a bit of bleed from the swabbing, but also we do get the occasional point of bleed coming through from just the regular Lamy nib, and we know the Lamy nibs aren't the wettest on the market either. So that's it in the Darkstar notebook. So scoring of this ink. On my usual scale colour, I've given a 4. I quite like particularly this sort of darker, dusty sort of colour. Performance, 4. The water resistance, put it up. Things like the shading and the sheen, it's good, but it's not great. X factor 3. As I said, for me, it's just that colour, so I gave it a sort of a middle score there. And the value is a 4. Now, if you get this within the set, I'd say that 4 could easily turn to a 5, because 3 notebooks and the ink, £20, is pretty good, seeing as they're both from sort of boutique companies. This averages out to roughly a 3.75 out of 5, which I don't think is a bad score for this ink. It's certainly not the most exciting ink I've used, but it is perfectly serviceable and works nicely with the notebook itself. So let's now just do a little bit of a writing sample in the Darkstar notebook. And I've still got the Lamy broad Safari All-Star, broad inked up with the Darkstar blue. So you'll be able to hear a little bit of tooth on the paper. We'll do a little bit of a wetness test just to show it in person, and yeah, let's see how we go. So this is the Darkstar Collection Travelers notebook, and I'm writing with a Lamy All-Star with a broad nib, and the ink is Robert Oster signature ink, Darkstar blue. Now you can see some of that darker shading is quite nice, but even the lighter we see across the the paper. I'll get a nice sort of close-up of this page for you in a second. You can see that it is a sort of absorbent paper. I'll try and lay down a nice pull, and you really don't get a lot of movement. It's a nice paper to write on with the pen. You can hear that slight bit of feedback, which you're not getting from the Lamy nib exactly, because they're pretty smooth, but you are getting it on the paper. Now the other thing I'll just try it with is I've got a Palomino Blackwing 602 pencil here, just to so I find this paper is really nice to write on with a pencil. It's got just enough feedback to allow the lead to have purchase on the paper, but as you can see, it sort of that slight tooth does wear the point down relatively quickly as well. Now just the standard sort of rub out test on the paper. Beautiful. Like, it's smooth enough to take that you can take the lead off, and I actually think this is a better notepad for a pencil than it is for a fountain pen, just in my own personal experience. So that is the Darkstar collection, Travellers. Maybe I could put the clean one out for you. There you go. And the Robert Oster Signature Ink Darkstar Blue. A really nice little combination. They do work well together. I think probably in a finer nib it would be even better on that paper. But the broad, sort of does give the ink a chance to show some of that shading property that we do like with Robert Oster. So I hope you found that video useful and helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscription button and the notification button to stay up to date with what I produce. If you've got anything you'd like me to look at or got any questions, please feel free to drop me a message either here or at my blog, which will be linked below. I'll also link below to Darkstar Collection for their website where you can purchase these items. I'm not affiliated with the company at all, but I think it's certainly and all these little independent companies are certainly worth supporting. So yeah, if it's something you're interested in, head over and see what you can get for yourself. In the meantime, enjoy your pens, enjoy writing, and I'll see you later.